And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So in the globalisation of the planet that is taking place and the corporatism that is being imposed upon the people, obviously the best remedy is the empowerment of the people. The question is, how can this be achieved? How can people shift their paradigm and begin to know who and what they are? We need people to have pride in themselves, pride in their communities, pride in their nations, pride in their heritage. We need national pride without nationalism. We need pride of race without racism. We need an empowering of spirit within all people. And this empowerment can really only come through self-realization and through all of the things that I just mentioned. People to be proud of their race and be proud of their nation and their national heritage, but not to be nationalistic, not to invalidate or undervalue any other race or any other civilization, to take joy in the differences in people and the diversity of our cultures, because it is so pleasurable. I mean, you don't want to go to some country overseas and find that it's just like where you came from. You want to go and experience the diversity of culture and the wonderful, beautiful nature of the people within each culture. But we have this internationalism that exists now, which is kind of a homogenizing of all of the cultures into this commercial model. And again, what we see here is that how this homogenization has taken place is through imposing a system of commerce upon the people within all of these cultures. Because the system of commerce didn't exist in tribal cultures, it didn't exist in native cultures. There was certain trading and bartering and swapping of food and mutual help and trade amongst each other, but you didn't really have a commercial basis to your entire society the way we have now, because everything in modern society is commerce. You cannot survive if you do not perform commerce. Even in everyday life, in order to have a roof over your head or to eat anything, you need to be performing commerce. But ancient cultures and tribal cultures never had this. And it is this system that has served to homogenize everybody, because the system of commerce that we use places everybody who operates within that system automatically in a state of manufactured scarcity. And so basically it removes the people from themselves, and it places a commercial value on everything that they do. And then the system provides people with a myriad of false pleasures and false wealth and virtually anything that can be thought of in order to, again, keep the people distracted from ever finding out who and what they are and from ever noticing what's going on around them. And that's the most important part, isn't it, folks? To keep people out of the now. And that's another very interesting thing about our society, is that we find most people who live within our society never live in the now. They always are in anticipation for something that's going to happen, or in fear of something that may happen, or they are in regret or nostalgia for something that did happen. So they're very often thinking about the past, or they're thinking about the future. This is, of course, what is happening when someone holds a grudge with somebody else. This is why grudges are so terrible, and anger and revenge is so terrible. When you're in a state of anger or revenge, you are totally fixated on an event that happened in the past, and you are in anticipation of the retribution you are going to exact from someone in the future. So you are so far removed from the now that you're missing out on your whole life. You're missing out on experiencing who you are in even a basic manner, because you are in a state of constant anger for something in the past which doesn't exist now, and you are in a state of anger and revenge and retribution for an event that is going to happen in the future, which also does not exist now. And so if you're not now, then where are you? You're torn between the past and the future, and you're in anger and anticipation for something that doesn't exist. And very often people are in a state of regret for things that happened in the past, so they are in a state of mourning for something that doesn't exist. Many people are in fear of what may happen in the future, and so they are in a state of fear and apprehension of something which also does not exist. And when we really look at human psychology, we would call fear or anxiety of any kind towards something that doesn't exist as being insanity. And yet this is the state that we find many people within our society to be in. So what we basically have is a society that functions according to different socially acceptable levels of insanity. And people have been driven to this insane state and this insane reality because they have been forced to operate within the parameters of a system that is essentially psychopathic, which has caused the people within it to forget who and what they are. And so the people are left wandering around in what is virtually a psychological matrix that they believe is reality, all designed to prevent them from ever finding themselves in order to perpetuate this system. So this is why I sit back and ask so often where this system came from, because really, when you look at it, folks, it doesn't seem to serve humanity in any way, shape or form. And I sometimes wonder if humanity could come up with a system like this just on our own, because it's so diabolically clever. And in its current form, if it continues to function, then it can only lead to one possible outcome, and that is the sustainable raping of resources on the planet while maintaining just enough life on the planet to continue with the extraction of resources until all the resources on the planet are depleted. That can really be the only possible outcome of the economic model that currently enslaves humankind. And so again, one really must wonder where this system came from. And the question must be asked, could we ever have come up with this on our own? And that's something that I really do think about quite often. I mean, really, when you step back and look at it, folks, you have to ask yourself why society functions this way. Surely it can't all be attributed to greed, to monetary greed, because there's so much more to reality than that. There's so much more going on. And you've got to really begin to see what money is. Money doesn't signify wealth. It's just that we perceive that money is what signifies wealth. But what is wealth is that which is alive. What is wealth is the planet. What is wealth is each other. What is wealth is the fruit of the vine and the vegetables that grow in the ground, the trees, the birds, the animals. Life itself is the true wealth of this planet. So it isn't about the money. It's about the planet, and it's about our activities on the planet. And it's about who and what we are and what we could be. And the questions that relate to our existence. How do we get here, and why are we in the state that we are in? Why is our pineal gland shut down? Why do we experience such a small amount of reality? And why have we constructed a social system which creates the type of destruction that we see in the world today? How could we have come up with this system on our own? Is this what you would have done if you'd been left in charge of anywhere? I mean, think about it, folks. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for us to have come up with a system which is this destructive. It simply doesn't make sense. And even when you look within the parameters of mainstream history, it just seems to be very unlikely that we would ever have come up with the world as we see it today. And you see, folks, the important part in asking such questions is the act of asking the question itself. The fact that the question exists. That's the important part. Because what we really see is that the system that currently enslaves us is the natural result of pathological thinking. If you have systems of control, like a system of monetary control, a system of business control, a system of media control, and it's all designed to function in a corporate manner, and it's all designed to function according to commerce, who can control the flow of commerce better, then naturally these organizations each get fatter and fatter and fatter until they begin to overlap. And so you see an overlapping conglomerate until you end up with one global corporation that acts and thinks pathologically and serves only to make itself more efficient. And you look at the business parameters that we operate within. Look at the parameters of any business. Look at the way a corporation functions. It's all about the bottom line. It's all about increasing efficiency by using less labor to make more profit. When you use less labor and you use cheaper products in order to create more profit, of course the quality goes down, because the bigger the corporation gets, the less competition it has, and so therefore a reduction in quality is the natural result. So of course the quality of the products is reduced and reduced and reduced, which thereby affects the consumers of the products, especially when we're talking about things such as food, because the quality of the food in the supermarkets these days is dramatically reduced from what it used to be many years ago, because it's far more efficient, commercially efficient, to not spend a lot of money growing your food to maximize profits as much as you can. And so, of course, the quality decays, and so you find the consumers of these products end up sicker, they end up stressed, they end up in a state where they're feeding another industry, which is the pharmaceutical industry. So it's all designed as a production line, and it's all designed to replace the human experience with commerce. That's the way the whole system's been done. Even your health is now commerce. We've seen big drug companies lately being sued because they've been found to be bribing doctors to hand out prescriptions to people who don't really need the prescriptions, because for the drug companies it's not really about curing people, it's about prescriptions. It's about getting their drugs sold. That's all they're really interested in. And of course, in order to sell their drugs, they need to have sick people. So how do you create sick people? Well, you feed them food which is going to make them sick. So this is why you find the Food and Drug Administration. It isn't just one, it's the food and drugs, because they control the food in order to get you to need the drugs that they would like to sell you. So it's a very clever system, folks, and we really need to step back and look at what's going on here, look at how humanity is being manipulated, and realize what we're capable of. Because things are certainly escalating, folks. We've got the carbon tax being introduced here in Australia. We've got the imprisonment of Robert Hayes that I talked about a little bit earlier, which is blatant totalitarianism right there in a British court, and clearly demonstrates the blatant criminality of the British court that did this to Robert Hayes, and therefore the blatant criminality of the entire British legal system. We're seeing the introduction of body scanners at Australian airports later this year as well, and these will be mandatory, I believe. There will be no way to opt out of the body scanners. Either you get microwaved or you do not fly. So it's fortunate that I'm going overseas when I am, because it doesn't look like I'll be able to leave the country after then, because I simply will not allow myself to be microwaved before I board a plane. We saw President Obama attempt to introduce Bill HR 300, which I believe contained a clause which would have required people to have a microchip implant in order to receive Obama's health care package. I don't think that bill made it through, but I believe there was an attempt to get that through, so that shows where they wish to take it as far as that goes. So eventually you will need a microchip in order to get any type of health care, and of course once they've got the microchip in you, then they can start using it for other things such as a cashless society. So you can see how all of this is being put into place, and of course all of this ties in with the satellite grid that's being put in place, and you can really see where the system is going, folks. Of course the global satellite grid performs a lot of other functions as well. Bill Gates has been talking about using a satellite grid to control genetically modified seed crops around the world, which he claims would be a good way to prevent world hunger. But of course, Bill Gates is a major contributor to Monsanto, and we know what Monsanto's goal is, and it certainly is not to prevent world hunger, but rather to control global food production. And so again, we can see how this control grid is being put in place. And this is all part of this whole globalization system, folks. And all this is happening due to the distracted state of the people within our society. People's continuance of running down rabbit holes, looking for people to point the finger at, looking for someone to blame, looking for someone to perform mass arrests as if that will help anything